welcome to conversation number 4 in our Life Story series, produced by Barrie Community Media. Today we are speaking with Cheryl Offord. Today it seems like the appropriate day for us to be speaking with Cheryl, as it's International Women's Day today, and Cheryl is one of my fellow warrior moms, and I'm so honored to have her here today to share her story and her family's story. And I just want to say that you're an inspiration to me, and I wish that we hadn't had to have met, that we both still had our children here with us, but women like you that have used their pain to advocate and to help other people that are in similar situations are just such a source of strength and inspiration for me, and I just want to thank you for taking the time to be here today.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
So I was wondering maybe if we could start with you just telling us a little bit about Shylynn, who she was, what was special about her, and what you'd like people to remember about her.
Well, she was a very, very beautiful girl. I don't think I have to worry too much in the sector of what I want people to remember about her, because she had made such a huge impact and imprint on people's lives that I often get messages from them letting me know that she was talked about still, even almost 3 years later. She embraced herself. Well, at the beginning of our healing process through this all, I took her to embrace herself in her culture, and she completely fell in love with it. We're Ojibwe, so we started attending ceremonies, and she involved herself deeply into that. We started going to powwows, and she was a beautiful butterfly dancer. She danced for almost 5 years. This was a space where Shylynn flourished. She just, I don't know, it was a place where if she didn't have it, it was very hard on her. But she did love her culture, and she also loved to bake. She loved to cook. She loved family. She loved family time. And I could almost say that she was the glue to our family. And we kind of all miss that, but we're trying. She had a big heart. She was always wanting to help others, sticking by others, being there for others. She had a huge love for people that struggled, so much that she almost forgot about herself along the way, but it was just beautiful to see that in her.
Sounds very like a beautiful soul, and I wish I had the chance to meet her, but I'm sure that Ryan and her are up there somewhere singing and dancing together. So
yeah, and I say with us angel moms, it's them that brought us together to help support and hold each other up, and I just think that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, and the strength we get from each other comes from our children, I believe.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And I communicate with moms all over the world, believe it or not. And I have moms from everywhere that reach out to me when they're having their harder days. And I'm amazed with myself on what I can do for them, but as the years go on, grieving changes. Mm-hmm. And as I always say, like I've built my own toolbox of survival mode, and I can reach into that when I need to now.
Can you tell us a little bit about that toolbox and what it is that helps you on those hard days?
The first year of her passing in 2019, I don't even know how I got through that year, to be honest. I can't even remember. And then we got into COVID. And then there was no supports, because into the second year was when I was starting to feel all of those firsts even though it was the second year, the first Christmas, the first birthday, doing things without her became very heavy on me. And because of COVID and not having any supports for myself in that sense to my grieving process, I started to learn myself. I started watching things, I started reading things, I started watching other lives of women that struggle with all kinds of things, addiction, because I struggled with addiction myself as a young girl. And of course, as we all know, when you go through something like that, relapse can happen even 25 years later. So I reached in all aspects of life. I started reaching out to elders in my community. I started reaching out to people from the powwow, and I just started collecting all these little tidbits that worked for me, including people. So I eliminated down to people that I knew could give me the strength that I needed. And I started just building this toolbox. So on a day when I feel like I need to just talk to somebody, I'll reach out to that person. On a day where I feel like I just need to listen to something, I go online and I listen to it. And that's what I do. If I feel like I need to go out into nature and go for a walk, that's what I do. So these are all these little pieces of my toolbox that I use. And if I need to just go visit somebody for a coffee and go for a walk outside, that's what I do. So it's healthy things that I chose. But I also, in my toolbox, have what I call ugly things. And if I need to lie in bed all day, I will. If I need to cry, I will. If I'm going to have that anxiety panic attack, I roll with it instead of fighting it. So yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think it's important for us to give ourselves permission to feel those ugly things, right? Like to feel all those feelings and emotions, and it's okay, and it's part of the process. And we need to go through them, because if we try to push them down, it's just going to make ourselves sicker, and then we're not going to have the strength to be able to be there as a support for other people.
Yeah, no, you have to acknowledge them, and that's what I learned from my elders. Acknowledge your feelings and don't battle with them. Just don't leave yourself stuck in them. That was one of the biggest things.
And it's hard. I'm learning that, to be real about my feelings and stuff like that, and to put up boundaries. And if there's days where I feel like I'm not up to doing anything, that's okay. And I can say, you know what, I'm just not up to this, and I can't do this today. Like I've given all I can, and that's okay too, right?
Well, and it's definitely difficult when you have living children, and everybody's grieving process is different. So I also had to learn. I had to learn to recreate those connections with my other two kids, because during Shylynn's struggle, they had often backed off from me. They didn't want to put a lot on me because I was going through a lot. That's what I think anyways. And I remember my son saying, "Mom, you have 2 other kids," or "Mom, you're getting sick, look at you." Or, my daughter would say, "It's always about Shylynn." And there was no harm in saying that, And then in the grieving process, it's like we all grieve differently. Like I could be having a really good day and my son might not be, and he might reach out to me. Or, my daughter, I could be having a bad day and she's having a good day. And it makes the home environment hard, because I don't feel like doing anything, but she's having a good day and wants to go for that walk. But that's where I reach into my toolbox and say, "Get up, let's go for a walk into nature." And I do feel better after.
Yeah, and I get that too, because I live with my daughter and my grandkids, and they're definitely a part of my healing toolbox. Because on those hard days, I know that I can just walk upstairs and get a hug, or they force me sometimes to do things that I don't really want to do. But once I've done them, I do definitely feel better. And there is a bit of, everyone is on their own path and their own healing journey. And,
Yeah.
We balance each other out with the good days and bad days. If we're all having a bad day at the same time,
Yeah.
it's harder for sure. But just learning how to be a family again, with a huge piece missing.
Yes,
is
definitely.
a challenge for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It is a huge challenge. We used to do Camping Fest every single year. Shylynn and I, she loved it. So one year she was staying in Ephraim, and my son said, let's go get her and go to Camping Fest. I said, it's 1,000 degrees outside. And he's like, Ma, just let's go get her. We do it every year. So that's something we're going to be missing out on because, like, I said, COVID kicked in and we really haven't had one. So when it's up, and that's another trigger I have to face.
Yeah, for sure. For us, it's St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
It's coming up, and Ryan was super proud of his Irish heritage. So he would always be the one that would be planning some big party or something, and so we just find ways to still do it and honor him and make it like there's still a piece of Ryan in this, right?
Well, that's Shylynn. I called her my little holiday monster because every holiday, she didn't care what holiday it was. She was baking something and, just turning on the music and living the day, right?
Yeah, for sure. So can you maybe talk a little bit about your family's struggle and Shylynn's struggle to get help and support?
The family struggle, it was just me most of the time. My other two kids, of course, they experienced as well, but my son didn't live at home. Her little sister did see a lot more than she should have. And we started to become a family that was stopped talking to each other. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like, we did, but we didn't. There was a lot of, it was hard on them to watch me fall apart the way I was falling apart. My life was literally committed to trying to save her. And I remember my son had said to me one day, Mom, what is it that you expect out of this? Like, how many times has she gone back into that life, got better, gone back into that life? He said, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be there for her, but like, what is it that if you let go a little bit to live a little bit, what are you afraid of? And I said, I'm afraid she's going to die. And he said, Mom, whether you're holding her hand or not, that's what's going to happen. So there was a lot of hardship between me and my two living children when Shylynn was living and struggling. But we were still very close. We could still sit down and talk about it, still sit down and try and maybe figure things out. Shylynn's struggle, and I always say till this day, started very young. She was only 14 when she started drinking, and then we got a hold of that, and then it started into the pot, and then we got a hold of that, and then it started into the crystal meth. But like I say, till this day I say, I don't speak of why. That's not my story, that's hers, and I'm not ready to talk about it yet. But we did find out why this addiction started, and a lot of it came from being bullied all through school too, right? Because Shylynn always just, even though she was a beautiful girl inside and out, she still didn't look at herself that way because of being bullied and the things that were done and said to her all the way to grade 10. And she still spoke about it even until 22. So it was up and down. She started with the crystal meth, and then it was a roller coaster from there, as we all know. She did have sobriety times, but Shylynn started IV using when she was 18 years old. And again, it was up and down, up and down, up and down, getting better. But I never, ever let her hand go, even though it was hard on me. And I did fight the system a lot to get her help. and there was huge failure on every aspect of the system, going from even just a Canadian mental health worker to the courts and everything else in between. There was one officer that actually, when Shylynn was hospitalized at one time, came because we had an incident at the hospital, and from that day on, for 5 years, he tried to mentor her and be there for her and do what he could to help her, but there's just nothing. Sometimes there's nothing you can do but love them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was just a constant fight with everybody, you know, a constant fight with getting her help, a constant fight with getting her into treatment. Where I think the system fails too is that when people are incarcerated that are struggling with addiction and they get into a healthier lifestyle, being in jail and getting out of jail, they walk out from having all these supports to having no supports, to having wait times. It's just craziness.
For sure, yeah. And Ryan had similar struggles. And I just want to go back to with what you said about you feel like you spent so much time just trying to keep her alive. I felt like the last 8 years of Ryan's life, like I know the rest of my children and my grandchildren and all my other relationships suffered because I knew Ryan's life was on the line. And it felt like that's all I was focused on, was keeping my son alive. And then we lost him. And it felt like such a huge failure. Because that's what you're supposed to, as a mother,
yeah.
That's our job, is to protect our children and keep them safe. And I couldn't do that. And so, yeah, that's still something that I struggle with. And it's kind of like afterwards, it's like you don't even know what to do with your life. Because you've spent all this time has just been focused on this one person and their safety and their well-being, and then they're gone. And it's you have to learn to live again, which is hard for sure.
Well, Shylynn got out of jail. Well, Shylynn was in EFRI on a bail program, which they were a godsend to her. They gave her a warm place. They loved her, and no matter what. So she got sentenced to 6 months house arrest, and she came home, and I knew she wasn't ready. And I always said, you know, we take on so many roles of being a caregiver to our children. We're not even we're a mother, but we're also a caregiver in the sense of where we become a counselor, we become a police officer, we become this person of so many roles when they're in the home because we worry so much about what's going to happen to them in the home. So, you know, Shylynn knew the rules that when she came home, she had to empty all her bags. I had to search her before she even came in the house. And when Shylynn was in the home, I had to constantly watch her. And if she was in the bathroom alone for too long, I would go knock on the door. Sometimes I wouldn't even sleep because I thought if I go to sleep, then something's going to happen and I'm going to get up in the morning time and find her, you know, and I lived like this for so long. Shylynn lasted 4 days when she came home, and then she took off. And then she was put back into jail for 12 days and then released again on house arrest. And in 6 days she came home, or when she came home in 6 days, she overdosed 4 times, 2 of which was really bad. And one of where her sister was literally pumping her chest and trying to keep her alive. So that was very traumatic. So I took her, I said, I got on my knees and I was crying and I said, what is it I can do to help you? Because I need to know. And she said, Mom, you can't help me. I have to help myself. She said, I'll call Detox and see if they have a bed. They had a bed. We got the medical clearance. She went into Detox and she lasted a night. And then back to EFRI. She was in EFRI for 3 weeks, and then she was downtown and a friend of hers had stole from the dollar store and the police were called. So because she was supposed to be on house arrest, she was put back into jail in the beginning of December. And she stayed there till April the 12th. She got out. And she took off on the Saturday night. And she was supposed to be just going to the store with her sister to get munchies and get McDonald's. And my daughter had called me and said she was getting into somebody's car. And then I had the police knock on my door at I cried myself to sleep because I knew. So the police had knocked on my door and I thought it was her. I woke up and heard the banging on the door. And my nephew was living with me at the time, and he came and he said, "Auntie, the police are at the door." And I sat up in my bed and I just took this deep breath and I just looked up and I just said to myself, "Are you ready for this?" Because I knew. And I went down the stairs and opened the door, and that officer that had mentored her was actually on shift that night. And he came to see her at 7:00 at night because she wanted to see him. She hadn't seen him in 5 months. And just the look on his face, he came with another officer and they walked in the house, and I said, "I don't want to hear it," but he said, "We have to tell you." So he told me she had passed away at 2:00 in the morning and she was in the Midland Hospital. And it was a complete blur to my reaction to it, but I guess I had said repeatedly, "I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do." And I just must have screamed at the top of my lungs. My other daughter came barreling down the stairs and she said, "Mom, what's wrong? What's wrong?" And she looked at that officer and she said, "What's wrong?" So they told her, and I can hear her scream even till this day.
Yeah, it's something that haunts you.
You ask yourself why, over and over and over and over, like, why? You promised me, or you feel that anger and then every emotion is kicking in, but she just wasn't ready. I think that with what happened to Shylynn during her addiction, because being a young woman, she turned to working in the streets, and I can only imagine the trauma she got from that. And I've always said, like, as parents, having an addicted child, or even a single parent or a sister or a brother or whatever the case being, yes, we suffer, but I can only imagine what they went through, and what they're going through, like the things that they see. Like, how many times do they see death? How many times do they have to try to bring somebody back? And what they put themselves into to continue that lifestyle is very sad, and they don't want to be like that. A lot of people say, they can get out of it, they can get help, they do it to themselves, and the list goes on and on and on. But
ignorant people that have no clue, right? That haven't been touched by it. And that talking about when the police came to the door, that's something that no mother ever forgets. And I actually refused. My son-in-law answered the door and he came to wake Tom and me up, and I refused to go.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long it was. I just laid there because I thought if I didn't go, then it wouldn't be real or something.
Yes.
And my daughter came down. She's like, "Mom, you have to come. You have to come hear this." And I'm like, "No." She's like, "No, Mom, you need to."
Yeah.
And it's something that still haunts me to this day. And I wish I could wake up from it, but I can't.
No, I know. And it's the post-traumatic stress disorder.
For sure.
And I do have it mild. It's not that bad, but it does get me sometimes. And those are the days that I know I need to just lay in bed for that extra hour or two, or even for the afternoon. And I don't care,
Yeah.
But I think with Shylynn, it was hard to bring to a reality even after it, because she was so frequently in and out of home. And I remember my son saying one day, "Mom, sometimes it doesn't feel real," because Shylynn was like home and not home, home and not home. And then it clicks in, like, and I could be in the middle of a work day doing great, having a good day at work, and then all of a sudden just bam, something hits me like a brick wall, and it'll quiet me.
Yeah, I get that. Like, I feel like the whole first year, it was still not total reality. I still felt like, no, I'm going to wake up from this and it's going to be a dream.
Yeah.
But the reality is starting to really, hit home. And some days are harder than others, right? Like, there's some days where something just really hits you. It doesn't matter where you are, and you just fall apart.
Well, and it's still very raw for you. How long has it been for you?
Yeah, not that long. Yeah.
You're a
it is
strong
hard.
mama. It took me a while to
comes
be
from
a
him.
strong mama.
It comes from Ryan. I say my faith in God. The strength isn't mine. I don't feel like it comes from me because everyone says I'm strong, but I don't feel strong at all. I feel so weak and so broken.
I know. They just can't see inside, right? They just see outside. And that's the thing, right? Like, we want to live for them because they wouldn't want us to be like sad and crying all the time and hurt and upset. Like, I remember the Saturday night before she left, we were making dinner and I was downstairs cleaning up and she came down and she looked at me. She said, "Mommy, you have to let somebody love you." I said, "I'll let somebody love me when I know you're doing okay." And she's like, "I'm okay, Mom. Look at." Like, she was so proud of all the certificates that she got in jail. And I said, "You know what? We'll just wait, you know?" She said, "I just want you to be happy." And she just gave me a big hug. Like, she hugged me so tight and, you know, we hugged and I was like, okay, you know, but she hung on to me so tight and she said, "I love you so much." And she said, "You don't understand how much I love you." And she goes, "I am so thankful that you stuck by me this whole entire time and didn't give up once." You know, so I try to hold on to that. For the longest time into my second year, I looked at all the negative of her life. You know, all the struggles, the way everybody treated her, you know, right down to public school, things were coming up, you know, and I thought I got to stop looking at everything that hurt her and not to excuse it or say it wasn't valid for her addiction, but that was the cause of it all, right? So there's blame on all those things.
For sure. And I feel like, though, we torture ourselves when we just focus on the pain that our child was in. And what I've been trying to do is force myself to celebrate Ryan and all his gifts and who he was as a person and not focus on all the badness, right, that happened to him and all the ways he was failed and stuff like that. We still have to focus on that so that we can help other people that are still struggling and stuff like that, but we can't let it consume us, for sure. And I don't know if this is true for you, but for me, sometimes I take comfort. I want him back and I'm like, oh, I wish I could just have Ryan back. And I did try to bargain with God when he passed to take me instead and have Ryan back, but then I'm like, I know he's no longer in all that pain now. So there is a bit of comfort in knowing that he's at peace and he's released from that, although I felt like it all got transferred to me.
Yes. Because you know what? We're recovering, you know? We're recovering. And what do we do with ourselves now, right? And like I've always said too, I've lived 1,000 different versions of myself since she's been gone to figure out what's going to make me okay in life. And then I just realized, like, I'm not okay, you know? I'm not okay, but it doesn't mean that I have, like, she wouldn't want me to continue to suffer, you know, with it. So I try to embrace myself in advocacy to where I know is a healthy boundary for me. And it's not that I want to give up, and it's not that I pick and choose where I want to be when it comes to advocating, but I do. You know, I know, you know, well, you know what, this event, I can't go because it's going to trigger me, and I know that. So I'm just going to stay back off. I'm going to do something for myself today, and I'm going to catch the next one, you know. But I wanted to be here today and talk because it needs to be said, you know. I found that with Shylynn, and all the times that she was incarcerated and released, there is a huge gap when they're coming out of jail.
For sure.
Everything goes down to money, and it's all about money, and that's the sad reality of it. But I think if we had a sober living facility, that could be part of a sentence. Maybe your last 3 months could be done in sober living to help you transition back into a society where it's a scary place for them. And they don't, when people recover, it's not just, oh, well, you know, so-and-so's been doing so good for a year, like, they're okay. Well, they're not okay, and they're never going to be okay. And I'm a prime example of that because, like I said, I battled that for so long. Like, I literally sat in my bed and held my head and I said, stop, stop. Because I just didn't, I was, you know what, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care, but I have so much to live for, and I lost my first grandson 9 months before Shylynn had passed, so I didn't get a chance to truly grieve the loss of him either until after Shylynn had passed, and my mom was very briefly before that. So it was heavy losses for me in a short amount of time, so I think I had grieved all of them once Shylynn had passed, but he's such a little gem, and I get him every so often. He spends the night, but and I have a picture down low for him, and he just loves to go and look at it and give her kisses and stuff, when I show him pictures of her, like, this is your auntie. But she was such a mama too, that I know she wants me to enjoy life and be there for her brother and sister, because they were big to her, Sure. She had a very good relationship with both of them.
And I think that I'm struggling with that right now, that Ryan, wants me to start enjoying life again and spending time and not feeling guilty for having joy in my life. That comes from those family times, because those family times were so precious to him. Like, he was everyone's favorite uncle, and so spending time with his nieces and nephews was something he looked forward to. But there's a part of me that whenever I spend time with my grandkids, it's a little bit of guilt tinged with it, right? It's like, why isn't Ryan here? He deserved this too, right?
I know.
So it's a challenge.
I know.
I think it's a lifelong challenge that we go through and that we struggle. And even for like you were saying, like, there needs to be more support for when people come out of jail. There needs to be more support for when people come out of rehab.
Yeah.
Like, recovery is a lifelong process. It's not like people just recover and then that's it. Because even if people do get into recovery, to a rehab facility, they get back released into the same community.
Yeah.
And if they don't have any connections with people that aren't using, they don't have a support system around them, it's very hard for them to not fall back into those old habits and those old coping mechanisms, right? We need so much more support.
We do.
In our community, for sure.
And it's hard because, there is wait times, and I understand that. I do. And time is very crucial when it comes to somebody that's struggling with anything, But unfortunately, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
So you got to find those avenues. And that's where the powwow came in for Shylynn. She had so many avenues, and I seen her dance into that circle a million times, but I cried every single time, because once she was in that circle, I knew she was surrounded by love, and she was at her happiest. Like, I would see her true smile and hear her laugh again and truly mean it, and
They say that the opposite of addiction is connection, and I truly believe that. And our slogan for Ryan's Hope is building community, connection, and confidence. And I feel those three things are really key for people that are struggling with mental illness and substance use issues and stuff like that, is that they need that community. They need that sense of community around them to support them. They need those one-on-one connections with someone that they can be totally vulnerable and totally open with, and they need confidence. They need to have a sense of purpose, right? Something that's their gift to the world, that they feel like, this is me, and this is what I have to offer others and my community and stuff like that. So I really feel like, that's how we heal each other, and that's how we keep people from dying, and we help them, the best that we can.
Well, Shylynn had said to me one day, we woke up and it was weird. She just was like, Mom, I want to go to the hospital and see if I can get some help. Will you come with me?
Yeah.
So of course I will. So off to the hospital we went. She had asked to speak to a Canadian mental health worker. So she said, can you leave the room when they come? I said, of course I can. Of course I will. I'll go downstairs and I'll get a coffee. And I didn't even make it downstairs, and she called me crying, you need to come up here. So I would come back up. And I guess she had talked about some of the things that, right off the bat, that happened to her through her addiction. And I guess the Canadian mental health worker had said to her, well, Shylynn, those things are going to happen to you when you act the way you do and do the things that you do. And that just threw her right off. That's blame.
Yeah.
Shaming her just in how she reacted to Shylynn when she opened up full force right away, you know, and she was done. She grabbed her bag, she was getting her stuff on, and she just was leaving, done. So I'm chasing her out the door, and we get outside, and I walk by, and I hear her scream at the top of her lungs. So I turned around, and she was literally on her tippy toes with her hands clenched to her chest. And it's almost like this pain from way down here just came out, you know? And I just looked at her. Like, that pain she screamed was so deep. And she said, if they can't help me, who can help me? And I just looked at her and said, you know what, babe? I don't know. I don't know. And when we went to the hospital, when she had met that officer, at that point, I was at the end of the straw. I just didn't know where to turn anymore. We had turned everywhere possible.
Yeah.
And it's hard because you know what? The truth is sometimes they don't stick to their appointments. Sometimes they miss their appointments. Most of the time they don't go to court. But it's the lifestyle, right? It gets a hold of them.
They're living in survival mode. And I know, we just gave up on the whole system because it failed Ryan in so many ways, over and over again. And not just that it failed him, it damaged him more. It caused more trauma and more hurt. And eventually we just had to rely on ourselves as a family to be there and support him and try our best to keep him safe, you know, because we knew no one else was going to do it. And that's what it comes down to. So I guess maybe my last question would be, what do you feel that we need to do better as a community?
That's a tough question, hey? I just think we need to acknowledge them a little bit more. That's all I have to say. We just need to acknowledge them a little bit more because they're hurting.
So acknowledge the hurt, the humanness, the brokenness.
They're not just shit under your shoes, so to speak. You know, they're human beings, and they are somebody's someone. They just need to find their someone, even if it's just one person that'll stop for 2 minutes. I think that people need to do more footwork. You can sit behind a desk all you want and say what you think they need, but you don't know because you haven't even talked to them. You know, I've had many communications with them, and
for sure,
I know what they need.
I hear that over and over, you know, through the people that we serve through Ryan's Hope and stuff like that, is that, like, we just want people to treat us like human beings. We're human beings, you know? Like, don't just walk by us like you don't even see us. Like, smile, acknowledge us, say hi, right? That makes such a huge difference for somebody that's struggling to be treated like a human being.
I heard the manager at McDonald's downtown say to a couple of them one day, well, she was very ignorant what she said, but I just looked at her. I said, what's wrong with you? Like, why don't you talk to them like they're human beings? So I've witnessed a lot of it, but
for sure,
I think a lot of the time they're just forgotten about. They're forgotten about, and the solutions that they have sometimes, I just think aren't healthy.
For sure, because they're so disconnected from what's really going on. The people that are making the decisions about what will help have no clue because they haven't even had a conversation, and they don't even know anybody that, you know, at a personal level that they're supposedly in charge of developing programs for. And it all comes down to a lot to do with money, and that some lives are less valuable.
Well, and look what you're doing with what you have, you know, and I'm very grateful for you for the work that you do, because I have watched many other communities, cities and towns have outreach workers that I wish were here. And you know what, Christine, you are one of them. So it's nice to have you out there.
Thank you. That means so much to me. And there's days when I go home and I cry and I'm like, I don't have it in me to do this another day. And then I have someone come up to me and say, you know what, if it wasn't for Ryan's hope, I wouldn't be alive. Or, you know, like.
Well, and sometimes you have to say that it's okay to not do it for one day.
Yeah.
You know, and I know it's hard because they're all little Ryans to you.
For sure.
You know, and that's where you're healing by helping heal them. Even if you see them every day, even if they promise you something and they don't do it, you know, you still gotta love them.
For sure.
You still gotta love them. And as a grieving mother, every year is different. I'm not gonna say that it does get any easier. I'm just gonna say that it's very touchy to say. It doesn't get any easier. You just learn how to live around it. And sometimes it pulls you back in, and that's okay.
And maybe I will get more tools for my toolbox as time goes on too. So yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I feel that this is how we change things. One conversation at a time. Letting people see that, you know, no one is immune from these issues. And it could be, you know, your child. It could be, you know, your niece or nephew or your neighbor. And so, no, like we need to stop the judgment. We need to start, you know, treating people like human beings again. And thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.